Okay, YouTube, let's go. I just made 4 reels on IG. Most of my energy comes in the morning and then I just fire it off. Yeah. And then the rest of the day is like, okay, that's when we're doing admin and then building relationships. Okay. But yeah, I'm changing some things around. Oh man. So these are my longer videos. The series right now is called Therapy Sessions with Myself. I'm holding the phone in my hand, selfie style, but let's bust out the tripod because my hand is gonna get tired. I kind of like holding the camera here, I'm not gonna lie, because it's just more personal. But yeah, I do see the benefit of having a wider camera because like I've said in past videos, people just want to see your entire body. We still behave like animals, and so when we're looking at someone for the first time, we want to see their full body, to see if it's safe, to see their energy. Okay, so that going. Fuck. All right. Not wearing pants either. Probably should. Okay. What's up, YouTube world? It's your boy Lux. I am just funneling as much of this energy as I can into the fucking cosmos. All right. This is my most valuable energy, is maroon, and you call that the Earth star. Maroon is the perfection of the root, and I do believe I have a perfect root, and that means perfect discipline. And that's why I call myself a performance coach, okay? It's so hard and it's so complicated when you go into coaching because it's like the intersection of what do I love to do and talk about? Okay, that's a whole conversation. Okay, and I want to talk to you. So if you've been watching me, let's chat. I'm trying to generate conversations and relationships daily. That's your job as a coach, guys. Your inventory as a coach is number of conversations that you have every day and number of relationships, and then the strength and quality of those relationships. So that also took me a very long time to figure out. As when you're a coach, your product is yourself and is a relationship with you. That's a weird thing to think about. I'll switch to this Seafoam Green. I've had to really work on my heart chakra, and coaching is an aspect of your heart. So it's like, what do you love to talk about? I love to talk about spirituality, energy healing, astrology, fucking, chakras, So then why not build a spiritual business? Because there's no money in that, okay? There's much more money when you talk about health, wealth, and relationships, okay? So I talk about all three. A performance coach, I'm just capitalizing on all three. You're also an entertainer. You have to entertain people, So it's very fucking confusing and convoluted. I'm a coach, but I'm entertaining people in my content. I'm also a content creator. I'm also trying to scale on social media to just be a personality or iconic, that I'm also, when you're building social media, then you can start talking about like what works and how you're getting followers, which is called being a social media strategist or social media marketing agency, and then to succeed online, you are good at marketing. To build any business, you have to understand sales, which is also communication, interpersonal skills, relationship building. It's like so many freaking things, so many pieces of this puzzle, And then Not to mention you're like transmuting or purifying or like enhancing people's energy all the time, constantly, daily, just processing energy, like a processing machine. That's what coaching is, honestly. And I think that's also what being a content creator is. Like, you feel the effect that you have on like people and like more and more and more people, right? And you feel that wave just like daily. Every piece of content that you make, even if it's only going up to 60 or 100 people in a reel, a trial reel, like people are still, the moment their eye looks at the content, they are downloading it in the most microcosmic level. Even if they just scroll past it on the feed, they will still see it for a split second. That's the thumbnail. They will still, you know, so it's like you have an active audience when you make content just by the sheer nature of social media will show it to people even for a split second. So that's something you also have to get around. My worthiness, my fear of being so tiny. It's like, dude, you have every single person who chooses to make content has an active audience in the most micro level, because even when people scroll past all your videos and posts, it doesn't matter. They will download you in the tiniest, most micro amount. So all you have to do is just put yourself on that vibration. You already have the eyeballs, okay? You have to believe that you already have it, because you do. Your job is to then kind of like intuitively, psychically, like, okay, so imagine that you can go into the mind. You already have an active audience. So you need to start seeing your audience as like another person, as like this collective mind. So on my IG, it's called Benjamin Ross One Mind, because my motto and my slogan is one heart, one soul, and one mind. Okay, that is the unified mind of basically Christ. Christ consciousness is the unified mind of all humanity, ascended masters. That's me spiritually. One heart is the heart, and one soul is to see human beings as one collective, one love, one tribe. But like, you know, so when I coach, I am tuning into people who are just like way more into this stuff, higher consciousness, spirituality. Okay, now that's a whole nother conversation. What does that actually mean in my daily life? It means no matter where you are, you're a body, you're a mind, you usually have a job, you usually have a physical identity, okay? Where you live, the things that you do, all right, that's your identity around yourself as a human being. But as a soul, as a cosmic soul, what do we want? We come to Earth. I believe we come here, we choose to come here, okay? I don't believe you're forced to reincarnate, you're trapped. Maybe we're trapped until we ascend, but we chose to become trapped, okay? Even if we are trapped, if we're not trapped, I don't know. Do you have to keep coming back to Earth? Do you have to keep coming back? So, truth seekers, spiritual people, we are curious, like, why are we here? What even is this? Are we a soul? Is there reincarnation? If there's reincarnation, then what's the point of well, why? Why? People will have questions. They want answers. Why are we here? Okay. On my YouTube, I show you like who I really am behind the scenes, more than just a business or a pretty face on camera. Okay. But like, why are we here? Okay. Then we have our lives. Well, my name's Benjamin. I'm, in my 30s. I'm an entrepreneur in America, in Texas. Okay. Zooming into the localized identity. I plan on moving to Asia, do the whole digital marketing nomad coach, aspire towards an agency. And then maybe I want to produce music and work with artists in the next decade. But, that's who I am. That's what I've defined. That's what I've decided. So you're a mind and a body and a space. But we define, our time, basically changes of time. So, how do you want your time to change? That's what a performance coach does. We are going to maximize the change of time. We're going to maximize your time so that you can have the most hopefully fulfilling and rewarding life. So, I think a performance coach is a life coach on steroids. Okay. I like to talk about life coaching, and like I've hired therapists, counselors, I've hired coaches in the past. The problem is after, usually counseling and therapy is like there is some pain, there is some burden in my heart, there is some affliction. Trust me, I have been a very afflicted person most of my life. I've decided I'm gonna go back to San Antonio while I scale my coaching business. Once I have $20,000 liquid cash, I will go to Asia. I'm not gonna go to Asia with less than that, and I need, how much money do you need to pull in? You need to consistently pull in at least 3 to 5K minimum, with ideally 20K. Some do it with much less than that. That's more than enough to thrive in Southeast Asia. Okay. Philippines is the cheapest, you know, Thailand is actually becoming more expensive. If there's a tier, it would be like Laos, Cambodia, which may be dangerous. I don't even know. I don't know. I've never been there, but it seems like there's like sketchy crime and like, may not be the safest country. That's the cheapest. Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia, okay, Philippines. Then the next tier would be like Vietnam, Thailand, and then maybe Taiwan. My mom's from Taiwan. She might think Taiwan is a little bit classier than Vietnam and Thailand, but I would say they're all kind of in a similar tier. Then it would, and China, would be like the next step up. China's doing better, but it's still extremely affordable. It's a little bit more expensive than Vietnam, right? Can be a lot more expensive if you're talking about like Shanghai, okay? Then South Korea, Japan, and then Singapore are probably the more expensive cities. But, yeah, Japan, Singapore, and then of course there are going to be places all over Asia that are expensive in any country. But in China, that would be like, the Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, I plan on spending a while in Asia. And so I have been meditating. I feel like spiritually, I need to go back to San Antonio and kind of purify my energy. Like, I came back to Austin. I was a college student here. So from 18 to 21, I was in Austin. And I came back here about 4 years ago. So I like to move in cycles and in waves. And so this was my awakening process. And this was me going from like a student to like awakening, but then just like completely like fucked. I don't know why, guys. I was dysfunctionally like miserable and depressed, like dysfunctional to like, I couldn't even like get myself to go apply for a job. Like I was just homeless and like a broken computer. I don't even know why, guys. My computer program was malfunctioning and broken. You could say maybe I was lazy, maybe I was on drugs. Like smoking weed is a drug, but I have no idea. Maybe I was irresponsible, or maybe I was just suffering. Why was I suffering? I don't know, guys. I don't know why I was suffering so much in my young adult life. But if we were to tell the story of my life, suffering for a very long time, most of my 20s have been suffering. And then as you become an entrepreneur, you just trade suffering for like discipline. Discipline is still suffering, but at least it's productive. I would say discipline is productively suffering. You're still suffering, okay? Who wants to wake up early and work out? People would say that fitness is suffering. Running, going on the treadmill, is suffering, but at least it's productive. So I'd say discipline is just productive suffering. At least there's some value of suffering. But suffering itself, is there any value of suffering? Not really, unless you're healing or to, have wisdom. That's the only, useful, like, component of suffering, if I'm honest. It teaches you to be kind. It teaches you that a lot of people suffer. It teaches you that there's still a lot of pain in this world. I spent quite a while watching this. There's this Buddhist guy named Thich Nhat Tram or something like that. This Vietnamese Buddhist. He built, significant following, but he's passed on. But he built a tribe in France called the Plum Society. What a bizarre thing. Vietnamese guy. He was like banned from his own country. Why? For being a Buddhist? I don't know. Maybe he was saying radical things, or I think it was anti-war rhetoric, but so he can't go back to his own country. So he's not a citizen of anywhere. So which country will take him? And then settles down in like France and then builds like a monastery in France. That's actually very interesting. I wouldn't mind visiting that. It's like a community or like a village or something. But yeah, he talks a lot about suffering, which is like a Buddhist thing. But we all suffer. So suffering teaches us compassion and kindness. And I am a very spiritual guy, I'm just a conundrum. Like, I'm so spiritual, but I'm also so materialistic and business. So it's a very strange thing. Like, I would prefer to just be very motivated, very energetic, very disciplined, very consistent, and I want to make a lot of money and have a very amazing and meaningful life, right? In my most materialistic base self. But in my spiritual self, I think, the opportunity is to serve God, and the opportunity is to serve this world. And love oftentimes comes from service. When you want more love in your life and you want better relationships, then you serve people. Relationships is just time that you spend with somebody. It's the amount of time that you want to spend with somebody or people, period. And you're in a relationship with yourself. Do you even want to spend time with yourself? And when I was younger and I was suffering, I did not. I did not want to be alone. I hated being alone. And I was constantly just going to escape my own mind and my own loneliness and my own suffering. But then I had to really analyze my friends. I've always had a lot of friends if I wanted to, but you just getting high or drinking or, shooting the shit. Like, I don't know. As a younger man grows older, you really have to audit your friends, man. So I'm going to go back to San Antonio at least until I hit my numerical goal. Then I'm straight up going to Asia. The moment that I hit the number, I'm on a plane. So I'm looking for like a month to month or 3-month leases now at a time. I've decided in my mind, I've committed, and I'm doing this. When I commit, you cannot stop me because I have invincible power. But I'll just put everything I have into it. Like, how can you stop someone who just never stops? I'm like an attack dog. The dog is just gonna keep attacking, dude. Even if it gets tired, it's gonna take a nap. It's gonna wake up, and it's gonna keep attacking. Like, I will not stop. I am an immovable object. I am a train that cannot be stopped. There is just so much momentum and weight. I am a metallic bullet train. I am a Shinkansen moving towards my destiny. But anyways, I've been having to reprocess my younger self, When I came back here to Austin, I was re-experiencing like all of my chaotic emotions. And like, I was very angry at my family, and I freaked out, and I just like screamed at them in a group text. And so they don't want to talk to me anymore. But I was very angry. I had a very angry childhood. I was angry at my parents. I was angry at my sister. Why? Because there was pain. Pain damages our relationships. I don't have any anger at them anymore. I've let that go. But I'm going to go back to San Antonio at least for a little while. That's me when I was 22 to 26. I was actually 25. When I was 26, I was in North Dakota, and then I briefly came back to San Antonio. I was living with a girlfriend, and we went on an RV trip, and then we went to Houston. So actually, it was only from 22 to 25. that period of my life, I'm having to like process myself. This is called Therapy Sessions with Myself, episode 2, 22 to 25 years old. Um, Austin was 18 to 21. I was homeless. I was sleeping in my car. I went out to LA. I had a misdemeanor charge for marijuana use. That was freaking annoying. Had to deal with that. Got dismissed. But yeah, 18 to 21 was like my ascension, my awakening, but then like unplugging from the matrix. And like, dude, I was like not even an individual. Like I was somewhat delusional because I had no grasp of reality. I was very afraid, but I would mask my fear by being like, you know, trying to be confident, but I had no idea what I was doing. I had no sense of myself. I didn't know who I was. I no longer could associate with my college friends. So who am I? Then I joined like spiritual communities. When you're alone and you're lonely and you have nobody, you can always like join a church or a temple, or religion will accept you when you're down and out and you have nobody. Then a Buddhist temple or a Hindu temple or the Hare Krishnas or a church, you can always go there. They're willing to accept you. Why? What is it about spirituality and religion that accepts the most damaged, most suffering aspects of humanity? It's philanthropy, it's nonprofits, it's shelters, and it's you know humanitarians will love the most damaged, most suffering versions of ourselves. And I'm a humanitarian. I'm a life path 9. They say life path 9 in numerology. There's only 9 paths. They say numerology is the number of humanitarian. And they say that the number 9 has to experience every single number. That's what's been so fucking frustrating about my life, you guys. I feel like as though I've already lived 9 lives, you know? And the excruciating and haunting pain of my young adult. They say like your golden years are from like 18 to 25. You'll never be that young. You'll never be that beautiful. You just begin to get older and older and older, and that was like my most miserable, like psychotic. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced so much emotional and spiritual pain to not want to live because the pain is overwhelming, okay? I've always been healthy and physically fit, so I've never really had excruciating like physical pain. You have a scrape or, a bruise or something. So it's like I've never had like excruciating like physical pain, but I have experienced excruciating emotional and mental pain, and I'm making this publicly available so the whole world can know if they feel like it. Maybe one day they'll go back and watch all my oldest content when I had no followers. But, dude, just fuck. If you're a numerology life path 9, I don't know if that's 10%, 11% of human beings, or I don't know if it's evenly distributed, but 1/9 of the world. I mean, dude, sometimes there is pain, but the pain it's supposed to teach you empathy and kindness. We are supposed to experience the pain of this world. And they also say number 2 is like a healer. So if you're a healer or a humanitarian, you experience the pain of this world because it's pain that unites us. When you see someone who has suffered just as much or even more than you, my parents would always tell me, well, our childhoods were even worse, so you're stupid, basically. They would minimize my pain because they would say, well, I had even more pain than you. But pain is the common denominator. Yeah, my childhood, my family, my genetic code. There's a lot of pain. Why? Pain of abandonment, pain of just like anger and brutality, pain of standards, pain of judgment, pain of criticisms, being condemned. Why are you screaming at me like for hours every single day? It's psychotic, but obviously that was, done to them. Why are you telling me such hateful things? I'm mad at God for the way that you turned out. In other words, you are so despicable or undesirable that I am even angry at the creator. My dad said that to me. It was like one of the worst, and I was like, what a stupid thing to say. I'm mad at God. Why would you be mad at God? You chose to come here, you retard. Anyways, I don't have any ill feelings towards my parents, but my inner child does. My inner child has a lot of ill feelings towards my parents. You know, I'm not going to list all the crimes, of like my childhood because that's slightly, foolish or ignorant to do that. But, just there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of pain. I felt depression as young as middle school. So, I've had depression ever since I was in middle school and high school. I was agnostic in high school and college. I didn't know if there was a God. I didn't understand why I would feel so much pain in my life. Not just my parents being bullied, being teased. My sister would tease me all the time. She never wanted to hang out with me. So, I've got damaged connections to my entire family. We don't talk to this day. Some part of my inner child does kind of resent them. She was kind of cold to me, kind of a bully, kind of teased me, never wanted to hang out with me. Started becoming nicer to me when I was in high school. She's 4 years older than me. But, it's like, you're just mean to me and cold. And then, maybe I was weird or annoying or obnoxious, but this is me in my earliest, I'm going back to San Antonio, which is like my connection to home. And my damaged emotional connections and my inner child. So not only did I grow up there from like fifth grade to high school, but I also moved back there for 3 years in my younger 20s. All right, so I'm revisiting this part of myself from like 22 to 25. This is who I'm honestly coaching because he's finally coachable. Before 22, he was not coachable. He was distracted. Well, he was a college student. He was going down a path that was not his own path. I went to a really good business school. I would have had an amazing job, but that wasn't my path. So I dropped out, I unplugged, and then I was just like free floating. I had no idea who I was. So the first chapter of my life is sense of self-identity. I had no self-identity. I went to LA, I was sleeping in my car. I got a couple jobs on Hollywood Boulevard. I got a job at an Indian restaurant, and then I got a job as a doorman at a club. They fired me because I ran up the manager's bar tab. I was just toxic, and I was toxic. I was angry. I hated authority. I had a bad attitude. I wouldn't have hired myself. He was a scum. That version of me was toxic, loser, arrogant because he feels like such a failure in life, But I was always very confident and good at charming people, so I'd always get jobs. People would always hire me because I could show them a charming version of myself that was not really me, it is me, but it's a very artificial, and so I felt like IG and California, I felt like, and even Austin to some degree, it's like they know how to show you the attractive, charming side to them. But when you really get to know them, are they nice people? Are they quality people? Or are they demonic? Okay, anyways. No, I mean, I have nice things to say about California. It's a beautiful country, beautiful state. But I don't know. Politics in California is just like insane to me. I don't, there is a dark side there. There's also a dark side to anything and everything and Texas itself. But anyways, okay, 22 to 26. I've been spending time in like I've been feeling all of the chaos and toxic emotion. I was dysfunctionally suffering. Like I could not hold down jobs. I would just randomly quit a job because I get triggered or I get really pissed at the boss or the manager. And then like I wouldn't even go look for a job, Was I lazy or suffering or both? I would constantly play this. It's like insanity, right? It's a crazy person in your mind. It's this constant voice of like you're so lazy. It's like literally like schizophrenia. When you have a negative voice in your head that tells you how lazy you are, and then you're just like you just feel constant pain in your soul. You can't even describe like where are you feeling the pain? Like everywhere in my mind, in my soul. How do you? Where's the boo boo? I don't know. It's just there. It's miserable. I just feel miserable. You know, afflicted. I was a very afflicted person. Anyways, so from 22 to 26, I worked in bars. I was unemployed a lot. I moved back in with my parents. They kicked me out and told me like you need to get your own place because you're refusing to go back to college. They wanted me to go back to college because I had this amazing career. I was a business student at a very prestigious university. I didn't care about that, and that just was like you trade one form of misery for another. You trade one form of slavery for another. Okay, that slave just has a little bit more money. He's still a slave. I saw employment as like slavery, and I desperately wanted to be self-made. So when I moved to Houston because I was dating a woman in a MLM, but she was like successful. She had a career in title real estate, and then built a network marketing team somehow, kind of like by accident. But she had the team, she had the money, she had the rank. So that's from me going from like lazy, clueless, unskilled to like starting to learn actual monetizable skills. I wanted skills, I wanted discipline. I was open to coaching, and I had many coaches and I had many mentors. So I absolutely believe in coaching and mentorship because it change your fucking life. I worked in pizza restaurants, Jason's Deli. I worked at a male strip club for women called Hard Bodies as a cocktail waiter. The owner said that I could be a pretty good dancer if I lost more weight. He said, you'd probably be a pretty good, we'd love to have you on stage if you could get a little bit more toned. So my aspiration was maybe becoming a male stripper, you guys. Oh my God. Hard Bodies. I was working at Jason's Deli delivering food. I worked at Jimmy John's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, a sushi restaurant. Actually, that's where I made the most money, delivering sushi, wearing a fucking, suit, black blazer, delivering sushi in a blazer. That's funny. Sushi Shima at the Vineyard. It'll be interesting to reconnect to San Antonio for a little while, but trust me, as soon as I get the money in, I'm gone. I'm gone. I'm planning my exit, planning my escape. But I think I need to reconnect to my family. I don't know how long I'm going to be in Asia. I may never come back. So I need to at least see them one more time before I leave. You know, but yeah, and just got to save more money and get more business. So yeah, I wanted to be in Asia by June. Does not look like I'm going to hit that goal. But I am feeling a momentum now on IG, and yeah, I'm just going to pump it. I've been able to build businesses extremely quickly, and it's your root energy, man. You have to have confidence in yourself. You have to understand your market. You have to know who you're speaking to. You have to have a market. But like what I learned about the root chakra and business of the past like 10 years is like, it's like a red energy, when I worked in, so San Antonio from 22 to 26, I went from working in like restaurants and bars to eventually going into sales. I got my first sales job when I was 24. I was an appointment setter for a solar company. I wanted money. I wanted success. I wanted mentors. I wanted to be around rich, successful people. I began to start manifesting that. I stopped hanging out with just like, distractions. I stopped dating girls who just wanted to party and smoke. And, I had to evolve from a young adult to a man. So, I cut all my friends out. I was just like alone, very lonely, but I was willing to be alone and I wanted to be alone because I only wanted to attract success. And then one girl was like, why would any successful person want to be around you? Like, you're a nobody, like, you're a loser. And like, that hurt. Her name was Carolina. I was hanging around just like the wrong people, people on drugs, and I had to clean up my act. I got baptized at Cornerstone Church, John Hagee's church. I was going to like young adult, church groups. I guess technically I'm still a young adult. It was like 25 to like 35, but yeah, I went into real estate. I failed at that, but I started attracting wealthy people and then people who had known wealthy people. So my first girlfriend that was like rich, her name was Jackie, although she was never technically my girlfriend, but we were definitely dating. Apparently her ex was the COO of AT&T, who was worth $25 million. John something. I think she was telling the truth, but she gave me some of his suit jackets, some of his clothes, but he was like the first rich person that I was in association with just through this woman, So I thought, well, she must see something in me that she saw in these rich guys. And I don't know why she's dating me. She was pretty, but she was older, I think she was just bored. So I was fun, young and fun, but young and dumb, really. Young and dumb, but I felt like maybe she sees something in me that she saw in him. Maybe I have that potential, right? I was hungry for success, but I had never really made any money. I went from being a college dropout to just I worked in a hookah bar. I worked in restaurants, in bars. Okay, that's all I had: restaurants and bars, hookah lounge, and a male strip club to my resume. But I'm a genius in IQ and I went to a top 5 business college. There's like, why did you do that? You went from being like a winner to being like a total loser. I don't know. I needed to experience 9 lives because I'm a numerology 9. I think it was part of my soul, journey. I've had to experience every step of life, from poverty and like homelessness and drug addiction and like even criminal, like, I was hanging around some sketchy people when I was younger, but anyways, had to clean up my act. Okay. And then, so went into sales. I started learning from like wealthy people, and I started learning from like people who are making like 2, 3, 4, 600,000 a year up to like 7 figures a year. I joined MLM with this lady. She was like number 3 in this MLM called doTERRA, Haley Hobson, and even had her phone number. So she was an 8-figure entrepreneur, and we would text and talk, and like was in this Voxer group and got some mentorship from her, free coaching from an 8-figure entrepreneur. I mean, I did spend a lot on the products, but so I started associating with wealth, multiple 6, 7, 8-figure entrepreneurs. I desperately wanted their mindset. Anyways, let's wrap up this video. I'll make an episode 3, maybe tomorrow or, the next day. But like, I started understanding wealth. I started figuring out the patterns and the personality traits and the energy, because I'm very into energy. I started figuring out the energy of wealthy people. And, even my ex, Bonnie, she was friends with millionaires. I was hanging out with millionaires, Claro, in the Woodlands. So we went to Hawaii together. Me, Bonnie, Claro, and his girlfriend at the time. I don't know if they're still together or not, but And he was like 50 or 60 years old. So I'm hanging out with like older people, you know. I don't want to be young and dumb anymore. I want to be disciplined, and I want to be a man, and I want to be rich, you know. So I started learning, older people and wealthier people are just more disciplined. It takes a while, but having a morning routine, like, I think the older you get, the more you become more like Earth. You have like routines, you know. It's just like you've been alive for such a longer time that, it's like it's these cycles. So like mastering cycles. So rich people are extremely red. That's something that I figured out, in my 20s. Like the wealthiest sales guys, they would all just glow like a savage kind of red color. I could see the vibration. It was the root chakra. It was a red. I just knew it was like a red color. Their eye, you can tell when somebody's red by their eyes. The eyes get kind of crazy, kind of loco, seeing red. Like, but the wealthiest salespeople that I was around in my sales jobs and the wealthiest entrepreneurs, they all had this kind of red, and they all had kind of a pride in their throats too. Like, I'm rich. They had this aura. If you go to Houston, especially, you see it like in River Oaks, like it's this aristocratic vibration in their like throat chakra. And then it's the crazy eyes of red. Not all rich people are super red, but like anybody who has money has that primal, they just have it. They have that primal authority. But then they oftentimes have this social authority of being rich. And I wanted that so badly, that kind of rich person throat, you know. By throat, I mean it's like this image that they're projecting, that they're, radiating this image of like, I'm rich, I'm successful. It's a pride, right? But it's also a superior kind of a vibe. My parents did not have this. I grew up in a upper middle class neighborhood called Stone Oak. So there was a little bit of, like, we're fine, we have money, we have money saved up, and like we can afford nice things and travel every once in a while. There's a little bit of that, but it wasn't like, no, I'm rich and powerful, that's a superior status. And I wanted that, right? So I began to start attracting people who had that. Claro, he drove a really nice Porsche. He lived in the Woodlands. Bonnie was one of my exes. She was a multiple six-figure, entrepreneur. And so I started surrounding myself with wealth. Had a mentor who was making like 2 million a year plus whatever else she had, real estate. So it's like, there's a power in their throat. But yeah, discipline. It's just discipline. They just work their ass off. They worked their asses off for years, and then they figured out how to monetize. So I was on a quest to figure out monetization and wealth. I desperately wanted to be successful and powerful. I hated feeling like such a loser, such a nobody. So I had to master the number 8 in numerology. The number 8 is business and power, and status. So the hard part about being a 9 is we're tempted to live the path of 8. I just want to have money, and I enjoy being an entrepreneur, and I enjoy having money, but there was something missing in my heart and in my soul. So that's why I just like left my last business, completely left. I couldn't sell it. It wasn't sellable, but I just stopped doing it, to build my real dream, to be an influencer, to be a speaker, to be an author, to be a leader, and to coach people, to help people, but then be paid for it. So there's always a part of me that wants money and status, but I have to feel an inspiration to what I'm doing. Otherwise, I don't even want to do anything, So I'm a really weird person. Like, if I don't feel inspired and if I'm suffering, then I'm like not productive at all. I am like completely unproductive. No consistency or discipline. But when I tune into my soul and I do my daily, meditations, and I practice my faith daily, I believe like nines are employed by like God or like the universe, you know? It was my intuition that helped me build my last two businesses. And I've got some flexes. Not that many people have built two businesses past a four-figure daily income. Like either one of those businesses, I could have scaled and I could have consistently been making more than $1,000 a day. I could have, but I didn't. I was inconsistent. I didn't have any motivation to keep scaling it. I just didn't, you know. If I was consistent and disciplined, I would have hired an admin for my last business, and I would have started hiring like sales guys, and I would have become like a broker. I had a dream of this last night, but I had a moving and delivery business. It's not hard to make like $100 or $200 an hour with the moving business. You just have to sell the job and then you can hire people, but then you have to manage them. And, you know, so business and scaling is like you have to be willing to hire people and then manage them. And then your ass is on the line if they do a bad job. So it's a bit of a headache, but that's about 95% of most business. It's just, you know, driving value, selling it consistently, being responsible with your money, saving and investing it. And then you just have to learn how to run ads. It's just a bit of marketing. It's marketing, it's, you know, social connections, it's networking. But, you know, I have no doubt in my mind I could take any small business to $1 million a year if I wanted to. I just don't, why would I want to do that? It's just boring to me. So I have, you know, have to have a connection to what I'm doing. Do I have a connection to social media and coaching? Of course, absolutely. You know, I like to speak. I want to help people. I want to serve God. I want to serve this world. And I do want to make a lot of money, but it all has to be aligned in this specific way. Anyway, so there, to conclude this episode, Therapy Session with Myself, episode 2, this was like my ascension process from 22 to 26, me growing up and becoming a man. I went into sales. I attracted mentors. I was reading books, like religiously studying success, personal development. Dude, I have so many books on like mindset, motivation, performance, you know, high performance habits, Think and Grow Rich, all the sales books. Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, you know, the whole Nightingale Conant business, you know, Success Magazine, that's Darren Hardy, and, you know, Bob Proctor, The Secret, The Law of Attraction. Now you have this success, personal development interfaces with New Age, spirituality, metaphysics. So I've always been into both. Personal development, like the movie The Secret. You had Bob Proctor, who knows a lot of people from Nightingale Conant. And then you had, you know, what's her name, you know, who wrote Rhonda Byrne or whatever, The Secret. This is when like Gabrielle Bernstein, this is when manifestation, Jay Shetty, spirituality, mindfulness, that's when it became very mainstream. So this was an interesting time of the world about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. You know, it was like spirituality meets personal development meets success. And then, you know, success is like sales, marketing, social media. Then you have like spirituality. So then you have like guys like Grant Cardone and Gary Vee. These are sales, marketing, social media guys, right? This was about 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you know. And then you have New Age, you know, Jay Shetty, the Dalai Lama, you know, who's Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, right? The Power of Now, Oprah. So there's this weird kind of fusion of personal development and business and success, sales, marketing, kind of, you know, traditional, and then New Age. And then now it's all like fucking wealth codes, manifestation, then the rise of the IG coach, right? The IG coach. You're going to tune into the vibrations of success, okay? But then how about like actual practical business tips? How do you actually grow a business outside of manifestation? Well, you have to study wealth. So in the next episode, maybe I'll talk about this a little bit more. This is a story of my life, but wealthy people all act in a similar way. Unless you've known or met wealthy people, you can only get experience from them, right? Wealth is always at the top, at the crown. And you can understand wealth by associating with wealthy people and understanding how wealthy people operate. Now, obviously, you don't even have to be around wealthy people to become wealthy. You just have to, acquire wealth and make money. But eventually, they will begin to associate with wealth and similar kinds of people. So it is kind of like a club, that a lot of people just can't get into. And, you have to act like a wealthy person. You have to be around wealthy people. You have to attract wealthy people. Most of my clients in my last business were in the wealthiest parts of Austin. And that's where I live in Westlake. But, Westlake, Bee Cave, Lakewood, like you have to be comfortable around wealthy people. You have to be around wealthy people. You want to understand them. You want to understand how they think. What are their values? How are they different than just like average people or like, the middle class? How is the upper middle class different from the middle class? How is the rich different from the upper middle class? How is the super rich different from the rich? You know? Anyways, wealthy people have standards. They oftentimes guard, protect their aura and their vibration. They have a very powerful status. But you even have broke people who try to act like that, superioristic and wealthy, and that's like kind of fake, entrepreneur. But, you know, it's having a personal satisfaction of achievement. I actually did it. I actually manifested wealth and money, and you become proud. So I've never manifested millions, but I have manifested a high multiple six-figure, income on the most micro amounts. And I've done business with a lot of millionaires, a lot of wealthy people. So I'm comfortable with that vibration. I'm comfortable around wealthy people. I know how they act and talk and operate, They want to feel comfortable, and oftentimes they will pay a little bit more for an experience and for an exceptional job. So they want to see excellence, on top of messaging, very on time, they're just handling business very well because they themselves hold themselves to a high standards, but it's also a bit of romance and charm and, fun, flirtation. Like, that's why they play golf courses and go to country clubs and go to nice restaurants because they enjoy being in the atmosphere, socially, but they don't want to connect with everybody. They want to be, selective. Okay, so that's how wealthy people operate. So if you want to build a coaching business, it's a luxury product. Wealthy people can afford coaching more than any other kind of person. But non-wealthy people will pay for coaching if they believe that it is a valuable return of their investment. So you have your luxury product that you market to the wealthier people, and then you have more of your competitive, I won't say essential. I don't think coaching is essential because when you have no money, like when I was broke, I would get coaching for free just through content and by reading books. And, they have their low ticket offers, which is like a book or their podcast or their YouTube channel. You can't afford to pay them for their one-on-one time, right? Like Gary Vee or Tony Robbins, so you can only afford to maybe go to an event or read their book or buy one of their programs or, things like that, go to a workshop or do a group coaching thing. So I absolutely do believe in coaching, but the people that can afford coaching, you're selling at a higher ticket price. So it's going to be probably like 75% of people would be wealthier and just have the money. 25% would be more middle class or lower middle class, but they really want the coaching product. So 25% of the time, it's an excellent return of their investment. It's more competitive. I don't want to say it's ever essential, but it could be essential if your skills and your energy helps them make more money. But that's only really like 25% of the time. 75% of the time, it's a relationship, and it could be healing, it could be development, it could be scaling a new business, or it could be a lot of people want social media visibility, so they want to have more confidence on social media. So oftentimes they are drawn to like the confidence of a vlogger or to even be on camera. It's like social selling. So a wealthy person may pay a performance coach to help them with social selling, maybe actual sales skills. Maybe they see that you're just very confident on camera, make content. As your social media scales, of course, you can offer more like visibility coaching, social media coaching, which is really like social media marketing. But in the beginning, 25% of your sales will probably be to coaches and people starting out with a smaller budget. So you should have a product that they can afford. Even if it's from $500 to $2,500, you should have a, competitive offer. I won't say discount, I'll say competitive, because you are being competitive. You're competing with people for $500 to $2,500. That's a competitive offer. 3,000 to sky's the limit, but say 5, 6, 10K, 3 to 6K, it's a luxury price tag. So you are creating a luxury experience for somebody. Like, yeah, it can still be a competitive thing, and it could be any kind of niche, fitness, bodybuilding, social media, business coach, or just wealth mindset. These are the higher ticket, more luxury things. Like you would pay a wealth coach because they're wealthy and they are comfortable around rich people and they can kind of put you on that vibe. So I've had wealth coaches, that I've dated or that I knew, friends of friends. They were wealthy mentors. They're just, they're of course they're comfortable around country clubs because that's normal to them, right? They're desensitized to wealth and poverty. So that could be appealing for some people, the wealth vibrations. Anyways, you just have to know your market. You have to know your audience. So I'm of course I believe in coaching. It's just you're trying to match your image, your content, and your relationship building, your networking, your outbound. You're trying to match that with your audience, right? So you just have to understand, if you're ever going to go into high ticket coaching or coaching at more than, 500 to 2,500 is competitive. It's more affordable. Anyone can afford that. But for an average person, even a $500 purchase, like it's got to be competitive, Would I sell $500 of coaching? Yeah, of course, I'll do a few calls for $500, but, to 2,500 competitive, and then 3,000, let's just say 6,000, maybe even 7,500, if you're new to coaching. Like, I think you could, but it would be a luxury market. It would be a wealthy person. They would want more of a connection with you. And, it would be slightly different. It would be more focused on the relationship and, what a rich person wants who would spend 10K versus what a middle class person wants that they would spend 2,500. It's going to be different, but there are going to be similarities. They all want visibility. They all want confidence. They all want a relationship. They all want, to feel better. They all want healing or more success or more networks or a mastermind, like more opportunities, more access to higher level groups and institutions. Everybody wants that. So there are universal things that everybody wants, but it will be two slightly different packages. So you should have at least two offers. One, competitively priced, I would say 500 to 2,500. You should be willing to give someone a $500 product, right? That's still middle-ish ticket. Anything less than 500, in my opinion, is called a low ticket. That would be from a $5 or $10 little book guide to $500, some kind of course or something. You should have, I wouldn't go low ticket until you have scale. That is something that I have learned over the past year. The people who do well with low ticket already have a large audience. So low ticket only makes sense when you can sell a lot of it. The only way you're going to sell a lot of it is if you already have an audience and you already have a lot of traffic. So if you're going to go into coaching, you should never have products less than 500 unless you're already an influencer. You already have large networks. I wouldn't do it just doesn't seem like a lot of confidence. It gets taken as low confidence if you don't have an audience. If you're like famous on TikTok, then yeah, it makes sense. Sell like $10 cosmetic product or merch or something, it makes sense to do that. But if you're going to go into coaching and you're starting off, at any income level, you have a competitive offer and then you have a luxury offer. All right. That's episode number 2. I'll see you guys maybe tomorrow or the next day for episode 3. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you later. Yeah, follow me on IG and TikTok and subscribe to my YouTube, please. Your boy is wanting to trend. I'll catch you later.